Welcome to the deep dive. We're the show that's really engineered to, cut through all that relentless noise in our modern world and get you straight to the core of what truly matters.
Yeah, there's just so much coming at us.
Exactly. And if you're a founder, maybe a leader, just a curious thinker, or really anyone trying to make sense of the just dizzying amount of information thrown at you every day,
Right.
whether it's trying to navigate complex business strategies or maybe nurture deep relationships or even just embarking on a path of personal growth, you know how easy it is to feel, well, utterly overwhelmed.
Totally. Information overload is real.
It really is. You're searching for those moments of like profound clarity, those aha insights that kind of connect the dots and help you not just cope, but genuinely thrive in what feels like a super complex reality.
Mhm.
And today, we think we're handing you a really powerful shortcut to being truly well-informed on a monumental thinker who basically spent his life creating precisely that kind of map.
Indeed. Yeah, we're embarking on a deep dive today into the extraordinary work of Ken Wilber. He's often described as a kind of pioneering cartographer of consciousness.
I like that, cartographer of consciousness.
Yeah. And he offers what he terms an integral vision. So think of him as someone who's built this grand, unifying framework, almost like a master key. It's designed to weave together all these diverse fields of human knowledge.
Everything from like physics to spirituality.
Exactly. From the intricate laws of quantum physics to the really profound insights of psychology, from ancient spiritual traditions right up to modern systems theory. Wilber attempts to give us this, comprehensive lens to view reality, a lens that honors both science and spirit, the individual and the collective.
That's right. And our mission today is really to distill the most vital nuggets of wisdom from Wilbur's pretty vast and influential body of work. We'll be exploring his theory of everything, which is famously known as the AQAL Framework. That's AQAL.
Equal.
And critically, we're not just going to talk theory here. We're going to pinpoint its real-world applications for you, the listener. Whether you're busy building a thriving company, maybe striving to deepen your most important relationships, or you're just committed to your own journey of personal excellence.
Yeah, the practical side is key.
Totally. So the big question we're exploring is this. How can such an expansive and, frankly, comprehensive framework actually help you identify crucial blind spots you didn't even know you had? How can it help you truly understand wildly different perspectives and foster that profound, sustainable, personal and professional growth? It's really about moving beyond just surface-level understanding to actionable, transformative insight.
Okay, so let's dive right in then. Let's unpack this with Ken Wilber's foundational concept, the AQAL Framework. As you said, AQAL stands for all quadrants, all levels, all lines, all states, all types, though, the core usually refers to all quadrants, all levels, all lines
Yeah.
as the main structure.
Right. Those first three are kind of the bedrock.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's designed as this remarkably comprehensive yet crucially non-totalistic framework for understanding reality.
Okay, non-totalistic. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, what that means basically is it's not claiming to be the final word on everything. It's not some rigid dogma that shuts down further inquiry. Instead, think of it as a living, evolving meta-framework, like a flexible container designed to consciously include and integrate a vast array of ways of knowing.
So it brings different approaches together.
Precisely. This includes, the empirical, objective methods of science, sure, but also the subjective insights of phenomenology, which is the study of conscious experience itself.
Okay.
And the dynamic patterns uncovered by system science, the interpretive arts you find in cultural studies, and even, really importantly, the timeless wisdom gleaned from contemplative and spiritual traditions across millennia. It tries to hold all of it.
Wow. Okay, so what's truly fascinating here, and I think vital for anyone trying to navigate complexity today, is that AQAL seems to leave ample room for new discoveries, right? For science to keep pushing boundaries, for culture to evolve,
Exactly.
all while integrating and honoring millennia of human wisdom and centuries of scientific advancement. So the ultimate aim is to provide you, the listener, with a richer, fuller, and ultimately more effective view of virtually any topic you can imagine.
That's the goal. Think about it. Understanding the nuances of government policy, navigating the, volatile currents of complex business environments, maybe resolving deep-seated conflicts in your intimate relationship, or even just making a clear personal decision.
Right.
It's all about moving beyond those partial truths to getting as complete and holistic a picture as possible.
Okay, so to really get that comprehensive view, we need to start with the quadrants, don't we? Wilber's four fundamental dimensions or perspectives.
Absolutely. The quadrants are foundational. Think of them as four fundamental dimensions or perspectives through which anything in the entire cosmos, and for Wilber, cosmos means reality in all its dimensions, not just the physical cosmos, can be viewed.
Okay.
And the core insight here, and it's a really profound one, is that most conventional approaches, whether you're looking at science, psychology, sociology, or even just our daily common sense, they tend to focus on just one or maybe two of these dimensions.
And that leads to partial views, like seeing only the trunk of the elephant.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
It leads to what Wilber critiques as partial views,
Yeah.
missing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You think you understand the whole creature, but you've only grasped a piece.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack these quadrants then, because they sound really foundational. So we're talking about four distinct kind of irreducible lenses, each giving us a unique type of information, a different kind of truth. And they're not just abstract ideas, are they? They relate to how we actually interact with the world.
Totally. Every single moment. They're very practical. Let's start with the interior experiences of an individual. This is mapped to the upper left UL quadrant.
Okay, upper left, the I space.
Precisely. Often called the I space. It's your subjective first-person experience, your consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings, personal meanings, values, your intentions. When you reflect on, what motivates you, what brings you joy or sorrow, or maybe what your deepest purpose might be, you are directly experiencing the upper left.
So knowledge here comes from looking inward.
Exactly. Through introspection, through looking within, through practices like mindfulness or meditation. And interestingly, in an organizational context, this is where something like McGregor's theory Y fits in the idea that employees are intrinsically motivated, self-directed, seeking responsibility. It's about their inner drive, their self-actualization, not just external carrots and sticks.
Okay, so if I'm a founder trying to understand my own personal values or my drive to innovate, maybe wrestling with an ethical dilemma, I'm squarely in that upper left quadrant. It's my internal landscape.
Yep, that's your I space.
But what happens when my internal landscape meets someone else's? What about our shared world? That feels different.
That brings us powerfully to the lower left LL quadrant. This is the we space. It deals with the interior collective.
The we space. Okay.
This is the realm of shared culture, intersubjective understanding, collective worldviews. It's the space of shared values, norms, language, traditions, all those unspoken agreements that kind of bind us together.
So how do we gain knowledge here? It's not introspection, right?
Here, knowledge is gained more through hermeneutics, which is basically the art and science of interpretation. It's about how we understand each other, not just as individual I's, but as part of a collective we. This is really the beating heart of an organization's culture, or maybe the shared meaning that makes a relationship truly intimate and functional.
Can you give an example, like in a team?
Sure. Think of a team's unwritten rules, its inside jokes, its rituals, maybe even its unspoken resentments or tensions. That's the we space actively at play, the feeling in the room.
That's a crucial distinction. So it's not just about my internal experience, but how our internal experiences kind of weave together to create a shared reality, a shared context.
Precisely.
So if a startup team is struggling, it might not just be about individual performance metrics, which I guess we'll get to, but it could be a clash of unspoken cultural norms or a lack of shared vision, or maybe an erosion of trust within that collective we space, right?
Exactly right. The very air in the room, the feeling of the group, can be a huge symptom of its health or dysfunction.
And often those lower left dynamics are incredibly powerful, yet maybe the least acknowledged, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Often the most powerful and yet the least visible or talked about. Okay, now moving to the exterior, the objective views, the stuff we can measure and observe from more of a third-person perspective.
Okay, the outside view.
Yeah. First, we have the upper right UR quadrant, which is the it space.
Oh, yeah.
This is the realm of objective empirical facts. Things like individual bodies, brains, observable behaviors, measurable data. This is where conventional science, especially in its more positivist forms, often focuses its attention. It uses empiricism, observation, and experimentation to gather objective knowledge about individual things.
So give me some examples of its space stuff.
Think of a brain scan showing neural activity, a specific customer's click-through rate on a website, an employee's sales figures for the quarter, or the quantifiable output of a machine on an assembly line. It's about data, systems, and observable cause and effect relationships for individual entities.
Got it. So if I'm tracking employee performance metrics using KPIs or analyzing website traffic data, studying brain activity during some decision-making process, or maybe optimizing an individual product's features based on A/B testing, I'm operating firmly in that it space.
Correct.
It's the quantifiable, the measurable, the data-driven world of individual things and their behaviors.
Correct. And finally, there's the lower right LR quadrant. This is the it space, which represents the exterior collective.
It's plural.
Plural, exactly. This encompasses objective social systems, networks, material structures, institutions, and techno-economic systems. Here, knowledge is often gained through systems theory, looking at how objective wholes operate and interact.
So this is the big picture stuff.
Yeah, the macro-level structures.
Right.
This is the realm of supply chains, organizational charts, market regulations, legal frameworks, political systems, global infrastructure. It's the grand machinery, the systems that govern our collective observable interactions.
Okay, so this would be like analyzing how a new government regulation impacts an entire industry, maybe, or how global supply chain disruptions affect a company's production, or understanding the systemic structures of a specific market.
Exactly. It's the objective, systemic view of the collective, the big interlocking systems.
Okay, got the 4 quadrants. I, we, it, its, interior, exterior, individual, collective.
You got it. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and where Wilber makes a profound critique of a lot of modern thought. He argues that one of the disasters of modernity was what he calls flatland thinking.
Flatland thinking. Okay, what's that?
This is the pervasive tendency, especially since the Enlightenment, to reduce all of reality to only the objective right-hand quadrants, which is the it, upper right, and its lower right spaces.
Ah, so ignoring the left-hand side, the interiors.
Exactly. Effectively dismissing or devaluing interiors, values, meaning, subjective experience.
Yeah.
Dismissing the I and the we as somehow less real, or maybe just byproducts of the physical stuff, or simply irrelevant to objective analysis.
So essentially the argument is we started to see the world as, quoting Wilber here, nothing but meaningless ITs roaming a one-dimensional flatland.
That's the critique, yeah.
We became obsessed with what could be measured, observed, quantified objectively. And in doing so, we essentially ignored or marginalized the rich inner worlds of individuals, the I and cultures, the we. We kind of cut the world in half.
That's it, precisely. For example, many scientists might focus solely on the physical brain, that's upper right, and its observable neurological functions, without really acknowledging the irreducible reality of consciousness itself, which is upper left.
Right. They might say consciousness is just brain activity.
Exactly. Or they might analyze social structures, lower right, and economic systems without deeply considering the shared cultural meanings, lower left, that actually shape those structures, or the individual intentions, upper left, that drive people within them.
It reminds me of what some physicists even said, right? Like Eddington or Schrödinger wrestled with this. They acknowledge science is powerful for the exterior world, but its methods just can't really get at consciousness or meaning directly in its own terms.
Precisely. Science is excellent at what it does. Its empirical methods are powerful, but they're not universal tools for all forms of knowledge, particularly interior knowledge. So an integral approach, Wilber argues, transcends this myth of exteriors untouched by interiors. It recognizes the irreducible reality, the equal importance, and the profound interrelationship of all 4 quadrants for truly complete understanding. You need all 4.
Wow. Okay, this sounds like it explains why so many interventions or solutions, whether we're talking business or personal life, often fail or have unintended consequences.
Yeah, I think so.
If we only focus on the right-hand quadrants, the numbers, the behaviors, the systems, we're missing at least half the picture and often maybe the most crucial half. This has huge practical implications for founders, leaders, anyone trying to affect meaningful change, not just philosophers mulling things over.
Absolutely. Let's make this incredibly practical, really nail it down. Think about understanding relationships and resolving conflict. This applies whether it's with a romantic partner, a co-founder, a key client, anyone really.
Okay, give us an exercise.
Okay, a powerful practical exercise you can do right now is to start by being mindful of your own upper left space. Just notice, what are your individual preferences in this situation? Your thoughts, your feelings, your desires. Get clear on your I.
Okay, tuning into my own inner world first.
Yep. Then, consciously shift your awareness to the lower left we space. Try to feel into the shared feelings between you and the other person. What's the collective vision, if any? What are the unspoken dynamics? Maybe even feel the subtle currents of conflict or connection that exist between you.
You can literally feel that sometimes, can't you? The vibe between people.
You absolutely can. You can feel the texture of this we space. It has its own unique character, its own life, its own history.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. The we space in, say, a long-term relationship can feel like this complex tapestry. There's shared history, love, maybe disappointment, unspoken obligations, even old hurts. It's profoundly real. Even if it's not a tangible it I can point to on some chart, it definitely has its own emotional resonance.
Yes, exactly. Now, here's the crucial and often the most difficult step in an integral relationship practice. Shifting to what Wilber calls your we,
You're a we, meaning.
meaning actively, empathetically imagining the relationship from the other person's I space. How do they experience the we space? This isn't just a casual thought experiment. It requires you to try and vividly and accurately imagine their feelings, their thoughts, their shared situation, and the collective we dynamic.
Wow.
You have to really ask yourself, okay, if I were them, seeing the world through their unique interior lens, how would they be experiencing our relationship right now?
That's a huge leap, isn't it? Because it means confronting the maybe uncomfortable realization that your I preferences, your desires, or your interpretation of the we space,
Yeah.
they aren't universal facts. They're not the only truth. What you call our we is just how your I experiences it. And if you just assume your I preferences are automatically the we's preferences, you're not truly including your partner's I space, are you? You're effectively kind of overriding it with your own perspective.
Exactly right. And this is a monumental source of ongoing conflict in relationships, personal and professional, because you're essentially making your individual I the dominant, often unacknowledged component in the so-called we. You're saying we, but meaning me.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see that.
And for founders and leaders, applying this integral lens is incredibly powerful, often revolutionary. Think about team dynamics.
Yeah.
You need to recognize the subjective experiences and individual motivations of each team member. That's the upper left.
Right.
You also need to understand the shared culture, the unspoken norms, the levels of trust or distrust within the collective. That's the lower left. And yes, you also look at the individual behaviors and performance metrics, upper right, and the systemic structures, processes, and tools that govern the team, lower right. You need all four perspectives.
And the same for customers and markets.
Absolutely. Truly understanding your customers demands this four-quadrant lens. Recognizing their internal desires and needs, UL, understanding their cultural contexts and shared aspirations, LL, tracking their purchasing behaviors, UL, and understanding the economic and technological systems they operate within, LL. If you neglect any quadrant, you're operating with a blind spot.
And those blind spots invariably lead to missed opportunities or unexpected failures, don't they?
Almost always, yeah.
That's incredibly insightful. It really highlights why so many strategic plans, maybe for product launches or cultural transformations, often just fall flat. We focus on the outside actions, the it and its, but miss the driving inner worlds, both individual and collective.
Yeah, the I and the we.
This profound understanding of perspectives, needing all four, leads us perfectly into the next major building block of the integral framework: levels of consciousness development, or, as Ken Wilber often frames it, the process of growing up.
Yes, growing up. This refers to the concept of structures of consciousness. Now think of these as kind of hidden maps or underlying grammars that dictate how we perceive, interpret, and feel the world.
Hidden maps, so they're not obvious.
Right. They are not visible through simple introspection or just by observing behavior. They're more like the grammar rules of a language. You use them constantly, they shape every sentence you utter, but you're not always consciously aware of their underlying structure unless you study grammar specifically.
Okay.
And what makes this particularly fascinating, and it's a relatively recent discovery really, emerging from developmental psychology over the last century or so, is that people at different levels, different structures, actually see the world in dramatically different ways. They hold fundamentally different assumptions about truth, morality, what a good life even looks like.
So it's not just that people have different opinions or beliefs.
No.
It's that their very way of seeing, processing, and making sense of reality is fundamentally structured differently based on their developmental level. Is that right?
That's exactly it. And humans, according to extensive research synthesized by Wilber and many others, tend to unfold through roughly 6 to 8 major levels or structures. These are often categorized into what are called first and second tier development.
Okay, first and second tier. Let's walk through some of these key stages because they sound incredibly illuminating for understanding ourselves and others, especially what conflicts or misunderstandings come from.
Absolutely. The earliest stages are very basic, foundational. For instance, the egocentric stage. This is often described as a first-person emean perspective, and it's characteristic of early childhood.
Egocentric, like centered on the self.
Exactly. Here, an individual struggles, or is often entirely unable, to truly take the role of the other person. They're focused solely on their own immediate perspective, their own desires, their own needs.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, a classic example from developmental psychology is Piaget's experiment with a 4-year-old and a ball. Let's say the ball has a green side facing the child and a red side facing you. If you ask the child what color you see, they will confidently say green.
Because that's what they see.
Right. They literally assume you see what they see. They haven't developed the cognitive capacity yet to take your perspective.
That's a powerful and simple illustration. It really highlights how something we often take for granted, like empathy or perspective taking, is actually an emergent cognitive and emotional trait. It develops, it unfolds over time. We have to learn to see from others' shoes.
Exactly. And the lack of this ability at earlier stages isn't some kind of moral failing. It's just a developmental stage they're in.
Mm.
Okay, so next we typically move to the ethnocentric stage. This marks a significant expansion of identity.
Okay, ethnocentric. What does that look like?
It's moving to a second-person use-way perspective. At this level, identity expands from just the isolated self to encompass a chosen group. Could be a family, a tribe, a nation, a specific religion, maybe even a particular ideology or political party.
So loyalty is key here.
Very much so. Care and concern are primarily extended to the members of the chosen group, fostering strong loyalty. But, and this is the shadow side, this often comes with an us versus them mentality towards those outside the group.
Yeah, you see that everywhere. This resonates with so many societal dynamics, organizational silos, where group loyalty and identity are absolutely paramount, and outsiders are viewed with suspicion, maybe dismissed, or sometimes even regarded as enemies. Think about the intensity of sports rivalries or political factions.
Precisely. It's a powerful stage, very common. Okay, continuing this growth, an even higher, more inclusive perspective typically emerges, the world-centric stage.
World-centric, so wider than a specific group.
Much wider. Often termed a third-person, all-of-us view. This is the capacity to genuinely see universal, objective realities and to identify with all groups, all humans, or sometimes even all sentient beings.
Wow. What characterizes people at this stage?
Well, individuals at this level often become almost ethically obsessed with freeing anyone from oppression, ensuring universal fairness, advocating for universal human rights across all cultures and nations. Think about an unwavering anti-slavery stance, regardless of culture, or a deep commitment to global environmental justice. It's about principles that apply to everyone.
So it's about a universal care, really moving beyond tribalism and nationalism to a deep concern for all humanity. This sounds like where many truly broad social justice movements, peace initiatives, global humanitarian efforts find their roots. It's a significant expansion of compassion and scope.
Yes, a major leap in complexity and care. And then, at the highest expectable level of development identified so far, we have the integral stage, sometimes associated with colors like turquoise, in models like spiral dynamics that Wilber often integrates.
Okay, integral. What's unique about this level?
Well, this level doesn't just add another perspective alongside the others. It fundamentally transcends and includes all the previous stages.
Transcends and includes? Okay, unpack that.
It means it doesn't discard earlier stages like egocentric, ethnocentric, or world-centric as simply wrong or bad. Instead, it recognizes that each stage is more whole and more inclusive than the one before it. It understands that egocentric needs, ethnocentric loyalties, and world-centric ideals all have their appropriate place and function within the larger tapestry of human development.
So it sees the value in all the previous stages.
Exactly. It sees the partial truth in each stage and tries to integrate them. It's considered the pragmatic pinnacle of evolution to date by Wilber, offering the most comprehensive lens because it integrates the strengths and insights of earlier stages without being trapped by their inherent limitations or narrowness.
So each stage isn't just replaced or rejected, but it's integrated into a more complex, more encompassing worldview. It sounds like a kind of nested hierarchy, like Russian dolls.
That's a great analogy.
And that leads us perfectly to the transcend and include principle, which seems absolutely central to understanding this whole developmental unfolding, isn't it?
It is the absolute core mechanism of growth and evolution in the cosmos, as Wilber sees it. From atoms evolving into molecules, right up to the evolution of consciousness itself. Each higher level of development transcends, meaning it goes beyond the limitations of the previous level. It offers a new, wider perspective.
Okay.
And simultaneously includes, meaning it integrates, it incorporates the essential capacities and competencies of the previous, simpler levels.
Yeah.
It doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Can you give a more concrete example?
Sure. Think about biology. An atom is transcended by a molecule, but the molecule includes the atoms within its structure. A molecule is transcended by a complex cell, but the cell includes countless molecules working together. Cells are then included in organisms.
Right. Each level builds on the previous one.
Exactly. Or think about an acorn in an oak tree. The magnificent oak tree is incomparably more unified, more complex, and more integrated than the simple acorn from which it grew, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it achieved that complexity precisely through a process. Wilber calls differentiation and integration new parts emerging and then working together harmoniously. It didn't get there by discarding the acorn entirely. It fulfilled the acorn's potential. The acorn is included in the oak's history and structure.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And this principle, transcend and include, it profoundly counters those common regression theories you sometimes hear, doesn't it? The ones that idealize earlier, maybe simpler, less differentiated states.
Absolutely.
Like the idea that we need to get back to nature by idealizing primitive societies, for example.
Exactly. While those earlier societies might have had certain valuable simplicities or connections we've lost, Wilber would argue they were often simply not yet differentiated in the first place, not integrated in a higher, more complex sense. Development isn't usually about a return to simplicity, but a movement towards greater complexity and inclusion, integrating the best of the past into a richer present.
So those theories sometimes confuse healthy differentiation, which is a necessary step in evolution, with dissociation or fragmentation. They see necessary steps of growth as a disaster or a fall from grace.
That's Wilber's point, yes. He argues that instead of seeing some sinister agency behind human differentiations like the rise of the ego or rationality, we should see a natural, profound progression where each stage builds upon and enriches the last, leading to greater capacity, greater consciousness, greater complexity.
Okay, this helps us understand not just broad societal evolution, but maybe more personally, why individuals see the world in dramatically different ways. It's their underlying structure. And for us as individuals, it offers a powerful framework to maybe identify our own center of gravity, developmentally speaking, and maybe spot crucial blind spots that might be hindering our growth or our relationships.
Definitely. This knowledge is incredibly practical once you start applying it. For instance, imagine you're a founder leading a diverse team. Let's say you're operating primarily from an integral turquoise perspective yourself. You're trying to integrate multiple viewpoints, foster collaboration, thinking globally.
Okay.
But maybe a key team member, or even a co-founder, is primarily operating from an orange perspective. Very rational, achievement-oriented, focused on individual meritocracy and profit. Or maybe even an amber perspective, valuing tradition, loyalty to the company, established rules and hierarchies.
Right. Different value systems, different ways of seeing success.
Totally different. Their experiences of the I space, what they value, and the we space, how they think the team should function, will fundamentally differ from yours. You might be focused on holistic well-being and complex systems thinking, while they're focused on maximizing this quarter's results for the company alone.
So what do you do?
Well, an integral approach requires a deliberate, compassionate, and specific understanding of your colleagues' developmental perspective. It's not just saying, oh, they're different. It's understanding how they're different developmentally. It's about tailoring your communication and leadership style to meet them where they are, authentically, while still maybe gently encouraging their growth towards broader perspectives. You speak their language while inviting them into a bigger conversation.
That sounds like an immensely powerful and maybe challenging way to approach leadership, conflict resolution, and even personal relationships. It's not about judging one person as better or worse, but understanding the different lenses through which reality is perceived, and then trying to build bridges based on that understanding.
Exactly. It fosters understanding rather than judgment.
Okay. This brings us to a particularly fascinating and sometimes controversial case study that Ken Wilber discusses quite a bit, especially in relation to modern political and social dynamics, the concept of the broken green.
Ah, yes, the mean green meme, or boomeritis, as it's sometimes called, though broken green is maybe clearer. This is a concept Wilber uses to illustrate how a healthy, vital, pluralistic postmodernism, which is often labeled green in developmental models.
The world-centric stage we talked about. Emphasis on equality, diversity, sensitivity.
Exactly. How that healthy stage can sometimes, under stress or through certain interpretations, devolve into extreme, self-contradictory relativism and even a kind of nihilism.
Sure, how does that happen?
It often results in what Wilber calls aperspectival madness. This is where the valid and important insight that all truths are context-bound, meaning there are multiple valid perspectives depending on where you stand, slips into the dysfunctional belief that there is no universal truth at all, only shifting subjective cultural interpretations. Everything becomes just interpretation, just power plays.
This sounds like that extreme, no truth, only interpretations idea that became quite prevalent in some academic and cultural circles, doesn't it?
Very much so.
And it often came with the assumption that any claim of universal truth or objective reality was simply a power play by some oppressive force, a way to dominate others.
Precisely. And this dysfunctional broken green, as Wilber describes it, can then project its own values, its own healthy desire for equality and freedom onto history. It might look back and assume that any perceived lack of modern green values in past societies must mean those values were maliciously oppressed by dominator hierarchies or patriarchal systems.
Instead of seeing it as just an earlier stage of development.
Exactly. It might then revile previous stages of development, like ethnocentric or traditional stages, as inherently deplorable or backwards. It assumes all individuals should naturally possess world-centric green values, and if they don't, it must be due to some form of systemic oppression, ignorance, or just plain malice. It often struggles to see that earlier stages were simply earlier stages of development, with their own internal logic and validity for their time and place, not necessarily malicious deviations from the correct green path.
Okay, this is where the source, Wilber's analysis, connects it to recent political events. And we should be clear, we're impartially reporting on the source's observation here, not endorsing a political side.
Absolutely. Neutral reporting of the analysis.
Wilber observed that this broken green attitude, this tendency to revile, ridicule, and despise previous stages, especially those at the amber ethnocentric level, which values tradition, loyalty, clear rules, established hierarchies. This attitude directly contributed to the anger and resentment felt by a significant portion of the population in places like the U.S.
Yeah, the feeling of being looked down upon.
Exactly. This intense alienation, this feeling of being dismissed, condescended to, and pathologized by perceived elites operating from this broken green mindset ultimately drove many of those voters to support figures who, however controversially, seem to acknowledge their grievances and speak to their values, even if crudely.
Yes. The source highlights that Wilber's argument isn't that it was just the amber level itself that drove election results like Trump's, for instance. But crucially, it was the reaction generated by broken green attitudes that turned typical amber populations into, as Wilber puts it, a seething, deeply resentful, angry, and even hateful cauldron.
Wow, so it's a complex dynamic.
Very complex. And the core point, again, impartially reported from the source's analysis, is that the broken green often fails to see its own complicity in the divisiveness it decries. This is largely due to its inability, in its dysfunctional form, to genuinely recognize the inherent validity and the sequential nature of developmental stages. It can't transcend and include properly.
So it becomes an ironic outcome. A stage that champions inclusivity ends up being intensely exclusionary and judgmental of earlier developmental stages.
That's the paradox highlighted. Instead of transcending and including previous stages, the broken green attempts to exclude and revile them, which paradoxically leads to more fragmentation, more polarization, more conflict. It ends up undermining its own stated goals of unity and diversity by denying the developmental reality of human consciousness.
Okay, so what's the path forward? How does green heal and become more effective according to this model?
Well, the healing path for green, as Wilber points out, involves releasing this hostility and instead extending genuine compassion, understanding, and respect to previous stages, even while disagreeing with certain aspects. It means embracing the valid growth hierarchy of development, recognizing that each stage, including its own, is a necessary and sequential unfolding towards greater complexity and inclusivity. Each has its gifts and its limitations.
And letting go of the extreme relativism?
Yes. It also means letting go of the aperspectival madness, which denies any universal truths and embraces a corrosive relativism. Instead, returning to the understanding that while truth is indeed context-bound, some contexts are universal, like, say, gravity, and that knowledge, while constructed is co-constructed with actual factors in the real world. And realizing that no perspective is privileged really means that integrating more perspectives leads to a more adequate and accurate map of reality. Not that all perspectives are equally valid or useful in all situations. Healthy green finds its proper place.
That's a huge, profound shift. It's acknowledging that true progress involves integration, not just critique or rejection. It's about green returning to its healthy, functional role as a leading-edge stage, helping marshal humanity's self-organization towards self-transcendence, rather than inadvertently contributing to division.
Exactly. A return to health.
Okay, this discussion of stages and their health brings us to yet another fascinating aspect of Wilber's framework, one that's critical for understanding holistic development: the lines of development. Or, as we maybe nicknamed them earlier, our many streams.
Yes, the lines. So consciousness doesn't just grow up through these major stages or structures, like moving from egocentric to world-centric to integral, following a single universal ladder. That's too simple.
Right.
It also develops along different lines or capacities, sometimes called multiple intelligences. And these lines can unfold somewhat independently of each other. This explains so much of the unevenness we see in ourselves and others.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
So give me an example. Imagine for a moment a person who is brilliantly successful in their career, maybe an absolute cognitive genius in business strategy, but struggles immensely in their personal relationships, or seems to lack basic moral sensitivity or emotional awareness. That common experience is precisely what the concept of lines of development addresses, isn't it?
Exactly. You can be highly developed in one line, like your cognitive intelligence, maybe your moral reasoning capacity, or even your aesthetic appreciation, but be less developed or even significantly underdeveloped in another line, like, say, emotional intelligence or interpersonal skills or psychosexual maturity, or even your self-identity line.
Okay. So Wilbur and others have identified quite a few of these lines.
Yes, many potential lines. Some common ones include
Yeah.
the cognitive line, how complexly you can think; the moral line, your ethical reasoning and action; the aesthetic line, your appreciation of beauty; the emotional line, your emotional intelligence and awareness; the interpersonal line, your relational skills; the psychosexual line, your emotional and sexual maturity; the self-identity line, your sense of who you are, which also develops through stages; worldviews, your overall framework for reality; needs, like Maslow's hierarchy; motivation; even spiritual intelligence, your connection to deeper meaning or the divine.
Wow, that's a lot of lines.
It is. And the crucial point is that an individual's development isn't usually uniform across all these lines. You get these jagged profiles.
So, for example, your cognitive line might be at a very high, maybe rational, orange, or even integral turquoise stage, allowing you to excel in complex business problems, innovate new solutions, lead large organizations effectively.
All right, super smart.
But your emotional intelligence line, or maybe your interpersonal line, might be stuck at an earlier, say, ethnocentric, amber, or even egocentric level.
Right.
And that could lead to ethical blind spots in how you treat employees, maybe a lack of genuine empathy for customers despite understanding them intellectually, or a struggle to manage your own emotional reactivity in a crisis.
Exactly. This is an incredibly common experience, especially for high achievers and founders, wouldn't you say? They're often heavily rewarded by society for their cognitive and strategic prowess,
Oh.
while other crucial lines of development, like emotional or relational intelligence, might be neglected or even stunted. They might excel in their career, amass great wealth, maintain peak physical health — that's another line. But their personal relationships are a disaster, or they struggle immensely with parenting, or they lack a deeper sense of meaning or connection.
I see this constantly, and I think people feel it internally too, that imbalance.
Yeah.
So what does integral mindfulness suggest here? How do we work with these lines?
Well, integral mindfulness suggests that to truly supercharge and vitalize your development across all areas of your life, to really move towards genuine wholeness and effectiveness, you need to bring awareness to every element of the integral framework as it appears in your own life. And that critically includes being aware of these diverse lines of development.
So self-assessment across the lines.
Kinda, yeah. By honestly assessing or getting feedback on where you are in each of these key streams, your cognitive, emotional, moral, relational, spiritual capacities, and so on, you can cultivate greater self-knowledge. And then you can pursue targeted growth in those areas that have been lagging behind.
Okay.
It helps you see where you might be operating with a really sophisticated capacity in one area, but maybe a more basic or even dysfunctional capacity in another. And that allows for much more precise impactful self-improvement rather than just vaguely trying to be better.
So it's really about a holistic approach to self-development, recognizing that growth isn't just climbing a single ladder, but tending to a whole garden of different capacities, a multitude of ladders that need conscious attention and cultivation.
Beautifully put, yeah.
Okay. This naturally leads us to another crucial distinction Ken Wilber makes, one that's particularly relevant for anyone on a spiritual path, or even just interested in peak experiences or moments of insight. The difference between states versus stages. This is what he often terms the dimension of waking up.
Yes, waking up. This is a profoundly important distinction, especially for understanding spiritual experiences, mystical moments, or even just temporary shifts in consciousness. So, states of consciousness are temporary, often spontaneous experiences.
Temporary states, like moods.
Can be, but often much more profound. These include our normal everyday states like waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Those are states. But they also encompass altered states, such as peak experiences, moments of intense joy, flow, or insight. Also deep meditative states like feeling boundless peace or a sense of profound interconnectedness. Or even drug-induced states.
Okay. And the key is they are temporary.
The key is that these states are transient. They come and they go. And importantly, they can occur at virtually any stage of development, any level of growing up.
Wait, really? So a powerful mystical experience like a sudden flash of profound insight into unity or a moment of overwhelming bliss that could theoretically happen to anyone regardless of their overall developmental stage or level of maturity.
Theoretically, yes.
So someone operating from, say, an ethnocentric stage could have a peak experience of unity consciousness.
Exactly. Think about some of the early EEG research on practices like transcendental meditation, for instance. It showed real, dramatic physiological changes in meditators, demonstrating what appeared to be a distinct fourth state of consciousness, different from waking, dreaming, or deep sleep that seemed physiologically real.
Okay.
However, the EEG, the brain waves, doesn't tell you how the person experiencing that state is interpreting it. Are they interpreting it as seeing the face of God or union with the divine? Or are they just interpreting it as feeling deeply relaxed and peaceful?
Ah, the interpretation depends on their stage.
Exactly. To truly know its meaning, its depth, its interpretive context, you have to not only access the state yourself, but also understand the developmental structure, the stage through which that state is being filtered and understood. So yes, the raw experience of the state might be accessible fairly widely, but how it's understood, valued, and integrated into one's life depends heavily on their stage of development. They're growing up.
Okay, that clarifies a lot. So states are transient experiences, potentially profound, but not permanent changes in structure. What then are structures or stages of consciousness in this waking up context? How do they relate?
Right. So the structures or stages of waking up are like the permanent capacities or traits that unfold developmentally through contemplative practice, similar to the stages of growing up we discussed earlier, like egocentric, world-centric, integral. These represent stable, enduring transformations of one's baseline consciousness itself, not just temporary experiences that fade.
And how do states become stages, can they?
Yes, that's the critical point here. The conversion of states to structures. For those temporary peak or spiritual states, those fleeting glimpses of unity, vast awareness, or profound peace, to become permanent traits, to stabilize into readily accessible, new ways of being, consistent practice, dedicated integration, and ongoing developmental work are required.
So it's not enough to just have a peak experience, however amazing.
Right. Having the experience is wonderful. It can be life-changing as an inspiration. But to make it a stable capacity, a new structure of your consciousness, you generally need to practice, cultivate, and integrate that state so it becomes a reliable feature of your awareness, maybe even your new default setting.
So a glimpse of the divine, or a moment of radical interconnectedness, needs to be cultivated through ongoing practice like meditation to become a stable, integrated part of one's being. Like developing any skill, really.
In a powerful sense, yes.
Mm.
It's very similar. A momentary flash of clarity or creative flow, which is a state, can be cultivated through deliberate practice to become a more stable capacity, a structure you can rely on, whether that's in golf, in business strategy, or in spiritual insight.
Okay, so in this waking up dimension, Ken Wilber outlines distinct stages of meditative development, right, that unfold through these progressively deeper states.
Yes, he synthesizes maps from various contemplative traditions. There's a generally recognized progression.
Can we walk through those waking up stages? They sound like they describe a remarkable inner journey.
Sure. Initially, there's the growth state, or gross realm, this is our normal waking consciousness, our everyday experience focused primarily on the physical world around us and our physical bodies. Standard awareness.
Okay, baseline reality for most of us.
Right. Then, as contemplative practice deepens, one might begin to more consistently access the subtle state or realm. Here, one starts experiencing dimensions beyond the purely physical senses.
Subtle, like what?
This could include things like lucid dreaming, becoming more frequent or controllable, experiencing vivid inner visions or lights, maybe auditory phenomena, or engaging consciously with subtle energy practices. You mentioned the three-body workout earlier that relates here.
Right, the gross, subtle, causal bodies. So it's not literal exercise.
No, not physical exercise. It refers to practices that cultivate the awareness, health, and flow of what various traditions call subtle energy or prana or chi or spirit operating within the subtle body, which is said to interpenetrate the physical. This might involve breath work, pranayama, visualization, mantra, internal awareness practices. Consistent practice in these subtle body disciplines can lead to reported benefits like increased vitality, heightened intuition, emotional balance, and inner peace.
Okay, so it's moving beyond just the tangible physical into more energetic or refined inner experiences, a heightened sensitivity to internal currents and perhaps non-physical realities. What comes after the subtle?
The next profound stage or realm is the causal. This is often associated with experiences of the witness or the transcendent self.
The witness, I've heard that term. What is it?
It's the experience of pure, formless, observing awareness itself. It feels completely detached from all objects of consciousness, whether they're physical sensations, emotions, thoughts, or even the subtle energies or visions we just talked about.
So detached from everything that can be observed.
Exactly. It's a profound discovery of radical freedom and liberation.
Yeah.
It's often described as a pure emptiness or sheer pristine awareness in which all phenomena, physical, mental, emotional, subtle, arise, unfold, and pass away, like clouds moving through a vast empty sky.
Wow.
You might realize, okay, I am aware of sensations in my body, but I am not those sensations. I am aware of thoughts arising in my mind, but I am not those thoughts. I am aware of emotions washing over me, but I am not those emotions. I am none of those changing objects. I am the pure, steady witness, the pristine, empty awareness that observes it all impartially.
That sounds like a fundamental shift in identity, realizing you're the awareness of the experience, not the experience itself. Wilber asks, you are that witness, aren't you? It seems like a direct pointer.
It is. It's a fundamental liberating shift.
Yeah.
You move from being caught in the stream of your thoughts and feelings, identified with them, to observing them from a spacious, peaceful, detached perspective. It feels like pure freedom from the turmoil of the egoic mind.
Okay, that sounds incredibly profound. Is that the end of the line? Is the causal witness the ultimate realization?
It's incredibly profound, a major milestone of liberation for many traditions. But according to Wilber and many non-dual traditions, even this is not considered the ultimate destination. The highest state or stage of waking up is typically described as the non-dual.
Non-dual, meaning
Right.
not two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also known as unity consciousness, or sometimes Toryatita, which means beyond the fourth, referring to the three prior states of gross, subtle, causal, or sometimes simply big mind. Here, the very distinction between the witness, the observing subject, and everything that is witnessed, the world of objects, dissolves.
The subject-object split collapses.
It collapses entirely. Subject and object are realized to be one taste, inseparable aspects of a single unified reality. As some Zen masters might put it, the seer and seen are always united in the present act of seeing. You realize you are not just the witness observing the world. You realize you are the world that is arising in and as that awareness. The boundary between observer and observed completely dissolves into seamless unity.
That sounds almost incomprehensible from an ordinary perspective. A complete dissolution of all boundaries, an experience of absolute unity with everything.
It's often described as paradoxical and ineffable, yes.
Okay, so if big mind is this ultimate state of non-dual unity, how does it relate to the term supermind? You hear Wilber use that term too. Are they the same thing? Because that can get quite confusing.
That's an excellent clarifying question, and it's a really key distinction within Wilber's later, more developed integral framework. No, they're not the same thing, though they are intimately related.
Okay. How are they different?
Big mind is primarily understood as a state, specifically the experience of non-dual unity consciousness. And as we discussed, this state can potentially be experienced at virtually any structure stage of growing up. meaning a person primarily centered at an ethnocentric stage could have a temporary big mind experience, as could someone at a world-centric stage or someone at an integral stage.
Okay. But if it happens at an earlier stage?
Right. If that non-dual state experience happens when filtered through a developmental structure or stage less than integral, Wilber might consider it a genuine non-dual insight, but perhaps a less than complete unity in its interpretation and expression. Because the form component of that unity, the way the experience is understood, conceptualized, and lived out, is necessarily limited or colored by the cognitive and ethical complexity of the developmental stage of the person having it.
Okay, so a real glimpse of unity, but maybe partially interpreted or expressed. So then supermind is something else entirely, not just a state.
Exactly. Supermind, in Wilber's model, is not merely a state, but the highest posited structure of consciousness itself. It represents the highest stage of waking up, known or theorized to date, a structure that inherently encompasses and integrates all the previous levels of being in evolution, gross, subtle, causal, and all the major structures of growing up from archaic up through integral.
Wow, so it's the peak of both growing up and waking up combined.
In essence, yes. It's seen as the structure that gives the fullest form to the inherent emptiness or potentiality realized in the big mind state. Supermind is the ultimate integration. When Supermind experiences big mind non-dual consciousness, it's not just a momentary flash of unity, it's interpreted and experienced through the lens of every single major level of being in existence that has emerged in the entire history of evolution, all the way back to the Big Bang, all held simultaneously in awareness.
That's almost impossible to grasp.
It is. It's said to offer the greatest freedom from the causal emptiness, with the highest fullness of all manifested forms. It's a stable, pervasive, embodied unity that sees the entire cosmos in all its staggering complexity and diversity as a seamless, interconnected, intelligent whole.
Okay, that's a truly staggering depth of awareness and integration. It really does sound like the pinnacle of human potential as currently understood. What kind of meditation practices, maybe more accessible ones, can help lead us towards these transformative states and, crucially, potentially help convert those states into more stable structures or stages of being?
Well, many paths and practices exist, of course, across different traditions, but some fundamental practices are widely applicable and recommended in integral approaches. Simple breath meditation is often foundational.
Just watching the breath.
Yeah, it's an elegant combination of focused attention, concentration, and open awareness. It helps establish mental stability and concentration while simultaneously cultivating the ability to relax, let go, and surrender into a more direct, mind-expanding contact with the reality of the present moment. By focusing gently on the breath, you anchor yourself in the now and gradually expand your awareness beyond the constant chatter of thoughts and emotions.
Okay, that's accessible. What else?
Another powerful and very direct practice, though sometimes challenging, is compassionate exchange, often known by its Tibetan name, Tonglen.
Tonglen. Breathing and suffering.
Essentially, yes. In this practice, you intentionally breathe in the suffering, pain, and distress, whether it's of others you care about, specific groups, or even your own difficult emotions like fear or anger. You imagine taking it into your heart where it can be transformed, and then on the out-breath, you breathe out feelings of release, relief, peace, healing, compassion, freedom from suffering, sending it out to those same beings or to yourself.
That sounds like the opposite of our usual instinct, which is to push suffering away.
It's a complete reversal of the typical egoic impulse. Instead of recoiling from suffering, you consciously embrace it with compassion. Even if it feels difficult initially, this practice cultivates profound awareness, deep empathy, and genuine compassion. It directly works on dissolving the rigid boundaries of the separate self, opening the heart to our shared humanity and interconnectedness.
That really brings these high-level theoretical concepts about unity and compassion down to a tangible, deeply human practice. It feels very direct. And as we continue to deepen our understanding of ourselves, whether through practices like meditation or integral mindfulness or just life experience, we inevitably run into parts of ourselves we'd rather not see, right? Parts we've maybe pushed away or denied.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the crucial concept Wilber calls cleaning up, which is often done through shadow work.
Yes. Cleaning up is absolutely vital for any serious path of growth, development, and integration. It's non-negotiable, really, for genuine wholeness. So, shadow. Shadow forms when, at any evolutionary stage, any level of development, new emotional, psychological, or behavioral material arises that is not adequately included or assimilated into our conscious self-identity.
So stuff we don't want to own.
Exactly. Instead of being embraced, understood, and integrated, this material gets deflected out of our awareness, as Wilber puts it, and into the wide world of not me and other. We push it away.
And what happens when we do that?
Well, this active disowning actually makes the conscious self smaller, more contracted, more rigid, and it results in what Wilber calls a painful series of symptoms, neuroses, pathologies, and dysfunctions. These manifest as things like chronic anxiety, unexplained depression, persistent anger issues, addictive behaviors, or maybe repeated patterns of self-sabotage in relationships or career.
So it's basically the unwanted aspects of ourselves, maybe our insecurities, our aggressions, our vulnerabilities, our judgments, that we try desperately to discard, to pretend don't exist within us.
Yep.
But they don't just disappear, do they? They kind of hang around. They follow us as our own shadow, forcing entry back into our consciousness, often indirectly, as these uncomfortable emotions like anxiety, guilt, fear, and depression, or maybe as projections onto other people.
Yes, projection is a huge one. It's like trying to get rid of a part of yourself, but just keeps popping up in inconvenient, often destructive ways, either internally as symptoms or externally as judgments and conflicts with others.
Can you give a classic example of shadow projection?
A really common one, often seen in relationships and conflicts, is when you feel intensely hurt by X person.
Hmm.
Often, Wilbur suggests, that feeling of being hurt is actually a projection that masks a deeper, disowned impulse within yourself. It might flip to reveal an underlying unacknowledged desire like, I want to hurt X, or maybe I'm hurting myself by denying this part of me.
So the emotion gets projected outwards.
Yeah, you project the opposite quality and direction of the original impulse. For example, you might feel yourself to completely lack anger. Why, I have no hatred at all in my heart, I'm a peaceful person, but then project that disowned anger onto the other person. But he viciously hates me. Look how aggressive he is. You see out there what you refuse to see and hear.
And the shadow isn't just negative stuff, right? Can we disown positive qualities too?
Absolutely. The shadow can also contain disowned positive qualities, things like our creativity, our personal power, our assertiveness, our joy, our sexuality qualities that we might find threatening or were perhaps shamed for expressing earlier in life. So we push those down too.
Okay, so the work is ultimately about owning those disowned parts of ourselves, the good and the bad, bringing them back into our conscious awareness and integrating them into a more whole, more authentic self. How do we actually do that? What are some practical techniques for this powerful shadow work?
Well, the first and often the most challenging step is taking radical responsibility. This means really getting deep down that I am doing this to myself, realizing that literally I am the one hurting myself by denying these parts of me, or I am the one generating the projection that makes me see these qualities so strongly in others.
That shifts the power dynamic, doesn't it?
Hugely. It shifts the locus of control from blaming external circumstances or other people, he made me angry, to taking full ownership of one's own emotions, reactions, and internal experience. I feel angry when he does that, and that anger is mine. It's a profound moment of self-empowerment, even if it's uncomfortable at first.
Okay, taking responsibility. What's next?
The second key technique is consciously reversing projection. When you find yourself strongly judging someone else for a particular quality, let's say their perceived selfishness or their anger or their incompetence, or even something you envy, you pause and ask yourself honestly, where might I be expressing this exact quality myself, perhaps in a hidden way? Or where might I be fiercely denying this quality in myself?
So turning the judgment back onto yourself as an inquiry.
Exactly. Consciously recognizing that those qualities you project onto others, like everyone else is so critical or others always reject me, are often reflections of internal dynamics. Maybe I am critical of others or myself, or I reject others or parts of myself. The goal here isn't necessarily to immediately act on the newly recognized anger or selfishness in a harmful way, but simply to bring the impulse, the feeling, the potential into conscious awareness as your own. Often just the awareness, the owning of the impulse, is sufficient to begin to integrate it, to make it part of a larger, more whole, less reactive identity.
Okay. And then you also mentioned bodily retroflections. This sounds like the shadow gets stuck in our physical body.
Yes, very much so. Many therapeutic approaches, especially somatic ones, recognize this. Physical tightness, chronic tension, muscle armoring, or what feel like persistent blocks or knots in the body. These are often the physical locations where unexpressed impulses, disowned emotions, or thwarted actions are literally locked up, held back from conscious expression.
So what do we do? Just try to relax the tension.
Well, just trying to relax them away might provide temporary relief, but often doesn't resolve the underlying issue. Shadow work suggests these trapped impulses must be thoroughly felt out, mobilized, exaggerated if necessary, and then discharged in the appropriate, harmless activity.
Discharged. How?
It might mean finally allowing yourself to fully cry if you've been holding back tears for years, or laughing deeply and without reservation if you've been suppressing joy. Maybe screaming into a pillow if you're holding back immense rage. Or perhaps hitting a punching bag, or engaging in vigorous exercise if you need to release pent-up physical aggression safely. The goal is to extend your sense of identity and responsibility to encompass all your organic activities, physical, emotional, mental, to integrate your body, emotions, and mind into a more fluid, unified, expressive whole.
So it's about bringing conscious awareness and acceptance to what has been pushed down and held in the body, allowing a kind of radical wholeness to emerge.
That's the aim, radical wholeness.
Mm.
By reclaiming these disowned parts, you reclaim the energy that was bound up in suppressing them.
This sounds incredibly relevant, maybe even essential for high achievers, founders, leaders, people who are often under immense pressure.
Absolutely.
If you're constantly pushing yourself, maybe denying certain weaker emotions, or just hyper-focusing on the external it world of business strategy and metrics, these unintegrated shadow parts could cause significant internal conflict, couldn't they? Lead to burnout, create huge blind spots in your leadership, or even result in spectacular unconscious self-sabotage in your personal or professional life.
Precisely. Shadow work is absolutely essential for leaders and creators, Wilber would argue, because it allows them to overcome these unconscious blind spots, to integrate conflicting internal drives, and to prevent the kind of self-sabotage that inevitably arises from these split-off, unknown parts of the self.
And the result is a more integrated leader.
Yes. It fosters a more unified and integrated self, leading towards that radical wholeness we talked about. When a person becomes more integrated through this courageous, sometimes difficult inner work, they generally become less reactive, more resourceful, more genuinely compassionate towards themselves and others, and ultimately far more effective and authentic in all areas of their life, not just in their chosen field, but in their relationships, their personal well-being, and their overall positive impact on the world.
Okay, so let's try and bring all these threads together now. We've covered quadrants, levels, growing up, lines, states versus stages, waking up, and shadow work, cleaning up. Why does Ken Wilber's integral thinking, this whole comprehensive map, matter so much for founders, creators, leaders, and really anyone committed to growth, particularly right now in this incredibly complex, often fragmented, and sometimes polarizing world we live in?
Well, I think Ken Wilber's integral philosophy, precisely because it weaves together these dimensions, the quadrants, levels, lines, states, and the absolute necessity of shadow work offers a truly profound potential for integrating truth and meaning in a way that few other frameworks attempt.
It moves beyond fragmentation.
Exactly. It helps individuals move beyond the endless, often warring, partial truths and fragmented perspectives that dominate so much of our discourse. It provides a framework that allows us to step back from those narrow, flatland views of reality we discussed earlier.
And fosters a more comprehensive understanding.
Yes, a truly comprehensive, multidimensional understanding of ourselves, of others, and of the world at large. It helps us recognize that almost all perspectives hold some piece of the truth, even if it's only partial, and it gives us tools to start fitting those pieces together into a more coherent, more useful whole.
And for leaders, for founders, for people taking action in the world, this isn't just an academic exercise or some philosophical indulgence, is it? It offers immense actionable, practical value for navigating the very real challenges of leadership, innovation, and just living a meaningful life today.
Absolutely. The practical payoff is huge if you actually engage with it. Think about it. Understanding the diverse perspectives and motivations within your teams and your markets becomes profoundly clearer and more navigable when you apply the four quadrants lens.
Right. Seeing the I, we, it, and its.
Yeah, and identifying the likely developmental stages, the levels of your key employees, your customers, or even the broader populations you serve that can lead to far more effective communication, more resonant product development, more targeted marketing, and just more robust organizational strategies overall. You meet people where they are.
And leveraging states.
Exactly. Learning how to access and leverage powerful peak states like intuition, creative flow, deep focus for peak performance. That's valuable in itself. But then, crucially, knowing how to potentially convert those temporary states into more stable traits through practice, that can give you a significant sustainable edge.
And the shadow work.
And of course, engaging seriously in your own self-development through shadow work makes you a more integrated leader. You become less reactive, less likely to project your issues onto your team, more resourceful under pressure, and ultimately more authentic and effective. It's not just about managing your business better. It's about leading your life from a place of greater awareness and radical wholeness.
So it's genuinely a pathway to being well-informed, isn't it? Not just superficially, like knowing facts, but with a surprising depth and actionable insight that can transform not only how you run your business or lead your team, but potentially your entire life.
That's the potential, yes.
It gives you this profound map, maybe more like a living compass, rather than just a static destination. It helps you see the hidden dynamics at play inside yourself, between people, within systems, allowing for more skillful, more compassionate, and ultimately more successful action in pretty much every domain.
It truly does offer that possibility.
Yeah.
It helps you transcend many of the conventional boundaries of thought and action, inviting you to live and lead with a potentially greater sense of purpose, clarity, wisdom, and interconnectedness.
Okay. As we wrap up this deep dive into Ken Wilber's integral vision, I want to leave you, our listeners, with a profound and often maybe surprising thought that comes out of this integral tradition.
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate search for spirit or for ultimate reality or for fundamental truth. It's often framed as a search for something out there, something distant, or something that will arrive in the future after much effort.
Right. The great spiritual quest narrative.
Exactly. But many contemplative traditions, and Wilber emphasizes this, suggest the search itself might be misguided. The goal isn't finding something new, but recognizing what is already fully, totally, completely present right now, right here, within you, and as you.
The idea that the great search itself, the constant striving, the seeking, the feeling that something is missing, that very activity can actually be the biggest obstacle to recognition.
Because spirit, or this ultimate reality, is too obvious to see and much too close to reach.
That's a classic way of putting it. It's not hidden. It's the very fabric of this present moment, the awareness looking through your eyes right now.
So when that restless search finally quiets down, when the striving falls away, even for a moment, you don't just find a theory of everything or a map to enlightenment.
No. The invitation is that you might realize you simply are everything. You are one with the all, inseparable from this endless, effortless awareness that holds the entire cosmos kindly in its hand right now. It's a realization of radical freedom and consummate fullness that was always already the case, simply waiting for you, for us, to notice.
Wow, a powerful place to pause. If today's deep dive has sparked your curiosity and maybe offered you a new lens, a new way to view your world, we highly encourage you to explore Ken Wilber's work further.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There really is. A great starting point, if you're new to it, might be books like A Theory of Everything, which is a good, accessible overview, or maybe Integral Life Practice for more practical applications. Integral meditation dives deep into the waking up practices, and perhaps his earlier work, The Spectrum of Consciousness, is also foundational. They truly are treasure troves of insight and practical guidance for living a more integral life.
Definitely worth exploring. And we genuinely love to hear from you, our listeners. What concepts from Ken Wilber's integral philosophy resonated most deeply with you today? Did anything click? Did anything challenge you?
Yeah, and how might you begin to apply this integral thinking, even in a small way, in your own life?
Right.
Whether you're a founder, a leader, a partner, or simply a curious individual striving for more understanding and effectiveness. Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments section below wherever you're listening.
We really do read them.
We do. And if there are other complex topics, influential thinkers, or profound ideas you'd like us to take a deep dive into in a future show, please let us know that too.
Yes, suggest away.
Like this deep dive, if you found it valuable, subscribe for more insights designed to cut through the noise, and definitely comment with what you'd like us to explore next. Until next time, keep diving deep.